So let's talk about channels. And channels can be one of those things that really is intimidating to people. They seem to be this mysterious thing that nobody quite understands until suddenly they do. Channels are one of those things in Photoshop, much like layer masking, where you have a light bulb moment. You suddenly, from going to a super cloudy day and not understanding what's going on around you because it's all dark and dreary and cloudy, to bam, the sun comes out and you go, oh, that's all it is. That's what channels are. At least in my experience, that seems to be the way it goes. So if you're still in the clouds, don't worry about it. It really isn't that difficult. And just kind of roll with it here and see if we can clarify some of the weather conditions here in Photoshop. Okay, so you see I've got a file here. I've got red, green, and blue. And I've got them as the primary colors here in Photoshop. This is pure R, pure G, and pure B here, and the white background behind it. And I've got a gradient here too. This is to demonstrate when we look at channels what's going on. So I'm going to go over to the channels panel here. The other thing about channels is what you see is what you get. So if I make something disappear here, when I go to channels, it's dynamically changed. So when I come over to any of the channels and look at them, they are going to reflect what's visible in my file. So you can make things temporarily disappear, and that kind of works too. Okay, so go to channels, and the top channel, the RGB channel, is actually not really a channel. It's a composite. It's a shortcut for getting back to the way your file should look when all the channels are working. So think of it more as a composite, and you can see we've got keyboard shortcuts for going to certain channels. Once in a while you hit these by accident, and that can kind of freak you out. Just know that. Command or Control 2, 3, and 4 are keyboard shortcuts to go to different channels. All right, so what the channel is if you know about screen printing at all, it's where you kind of cover stuff up on this screen or the piece of cloth. You cover it with wax, and then you leave part of the cloth not covered with wax. Then you run the ink over it, and the ink goes through the part of the cloth that isn't covered with wax and leaves the color on your t-shirt, for instance. So think of it this way. If I look at this channel as a screen print, all the area that's covered with black is covered in wax. It has no red in it whatsoever. All the area that's covered in white has red in it. All right, so these are my three color channels that make up the image. By mixing those three color channels together, I get this. But this is telling me how to mix those colors together. So everywhere that I have white or light gray, there's some red in it. Everywhere where there's black, there's absolutely no red in it. All right, so down here on the gradient, you can see that there's a lot of red over here, there's no red over here. Now remember, RGB is an additive color process. That means that we add the colors together to get white. If I were to switch this to CMYK, then we are in a subtractive color process. Okay, that means where you take stuff out to get to white. All right, so in this case, it works a little bit differently. I'm going to go back and get over here before we switched it, because I want to stay in RGB just to explain channels. Okay, but remember, so we're adding full complement of red, green, and blue together to get white. And you can see as we go through the channels, that white background is white in every channel, meaning we've got full R, full G, full B. And since I'm working in an 8-bit image, as you see up here, 8 bits right there, then right there, that means that there are 200 and that the white is at 255 right here in each of these colors. There's 255 red, 255 green, 255 blue to get to pure white. There's 0 blue right here, but what is there right there? So if I look over here, right here, that's 100% green. That's where the green is. Want to check it out? There's the green. Okay, so these are ways to put down color in varying amounts. And because I've got these pure red, green, and blues right here, it's putting it down at 100%. All right, so there's where the red is laid out. Everywhere where there's white or light gray, there's some red in there at least. This is where the green is. Again, there's no green in those two circles. Those are the blue and the red circle. The green is actually over here, so we've got 100% green here, 100% green here as well, but we've also got 100% red and blue up here where it's white. That's why it's not green. Okay, and down here we've got 100% green here, but no green here because that's the black part of our image. Over here, we have the blue. That's our blue circle. We can see we have no blue right in either one of those spots, but we have 100% blue there and 100% blue again where it's white. Okay, so that's what the color channels are. The nice part about those is that you can use the channels as a starting point to make a selection. Let me come in here and get an image. And I'm going to just come in here. Let's see if we've got something in our folder. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Open that up in Photoshop, and here's a different, very different looking channel right there. You can see there's a lot of red in here, very much in the middle of the flower. There's a lot of red. Not so much red now in the flower, a little bit because it's fairly light, but there's a lot more green around the edge here. In the blue channel, there's hardly any blue in the leaves around the flower, but the flower is still light enough, almost bright enough that you've still got a little bit of blue in there as well. So say, for instance, you want to use that as a start of a selection. And you can do this with hair as well, and that you've got in your video that I added this week to week 3. Make a copy because you never want to be working on your original color channels. If I come in here and use that as a start of a selection and come in and do what I'm going to do, which is scrunching these together to make a selection of this, and do that. Okay, and just quickly use my paintbrush, and I did cover this in the other the third video, the second selections video this week. I'm going to switch to white and paint on the inside of this now, and I'm going to do it quickly because I don't want to spend a lot of time, but you can be a little more careful about this so that you get all the white stuff, all the white in the middle, so that that's all selected. Remember, and I'm going to back up here in a second, the white is the selected part. Okay, and I'm missing one petal down here, but I'm not going to worry about that. But I did that on the color channel. Now when I go back to my composite, look at what it's done. It's gone crazy as far as what it's done to my colors. That's why you do not want to do that to a color channel, all right? So let me go back in my history to where I opened it. There we go. Okay, so duplicate the color channel and then do that bit where you increase the contrast by coming into levels and scrunching those sliders together so that we get white where we get contrast. We can switch the white and the black later, but you're going to get a lot of contrast. And in here, and I can pick up that petal even a little bit, and you can do this in several steps so that you do a little bit better job. But now when I've got as a copy, the blue channel copy, I'm not messing with the color information for my file. Okay, hugely important not to mess with your color channels accidentally. Make a copy. Now what this blue channel, blue copy color is now an alpha channel. Alpha channel sounds intimidating, right? But all an alpha channel is a selection. It's a saved selection. I can make an alpha channel in a number of different ways. If I go back to my demo file here, make everything, click on the RGB channel, and it gets you right back to what your image looks like. If I come over here and Control Command click on the blue layer thumbnail to make a selection of what's on that layer, then go to channels and make a new channel out of that. Make a new channel out of that way by clicking on that one. Then I have an alpha channel. All right, an alpha channel is nothing more than a saved selection. Where it's white is saved, is selected, where it's black is not selected, so this is a saved selection. I can go up here at any point and load that selection or get my marching ants back. There's alpha channel 2. I can load that as a selection. I can also load transparency as a selection, layer 1 transparency as a selection, which is the same thing as Control Command clicking. Any of the alpha channels can be loaded. So there we go, and I have my marching ants back. So that's all an alpha channel is a saved selection. Okay, so the other part about that is I can edit these. I can use my paintbrush tool to come in here and change that selection just by painting with black. So now when I load that selection, I can go up here to the select and load selection option up here. Let me come up here. There we go. Now I should be able to load selection right there and go to alpha 2, and I've changed it. So now when I look at it, you can see that selection's very much changed. I can edit that selection in a lot of different ways, which is really, really cool, by using levels, by using a paintbrush, by any method that kind of works within the alpha channels there. But it is a saved selection that will save with my file. As long as I leave it there, I don't throw it in the trash, it's going to be saved with my file in the Photoshop document format or in TIFF format. So either of those formats, and in the DSC format as well, is going to be important to remember. So that is the alpha channel, simply put, saved selection. As we go through this, as I do a gradient here, let's do a gradient. Now that is a saved selection in the alpha channel, but this part up here where it's pure white is selected fully. Where it's transitioning here down here is only partially selected. So if I load that as a channel, come in here to my layers again. Oh, I've compacted those. Let me go back and make a new layer with the marquee tool and fill it with a lovely bright color. This time I'll do a little cyan right there. Okay, so now if I come in and load selection, and I go to my alpha channel right there, which is the gradient, it gives you the marching ants, but remember, marching ants are basically binary, off and on. But if I hit the delete key, you can see it's not really off and on. It is actually giving me that selection. It just can't show me all the gradations of the selection with the marching ants. So channels are a smarter way. It's more like a quick mask, and the way in which you can select. You can have degrees of selection. So channels, we have, again, these are our color channels right here, the color channels that make up the image itself by putting down the ink in certain degrees and certain variations. And you can see now as we go through here, those have changed because, as I said originally, these are very dynamic. Okay, whatever is showing in your image up here is going to be reflected in your channel, your color channels down there. The alpha channels won't change, however, unless you change them, right? So alpha channels. Okay, so we also can make a spot color channel. So if I want to come in here and I'm going to put in a type layer right there. Okay, I'm going to Command or Control click on that layer and go over to channels and make a new spot channel right there. Okay, now this channel is a horse of a different color. This is for printing purposes. This is not for display purposes or for doing anything else. This is when you send this off to a professional printing press where they have 4 or 5 colors available to you or more. What this is, and I'm going to turn that off so it's basically masking it right there. That's why it's reddish. But when you have a spot color in here, it is an indication to the printer that you want another printing rolling press to go through. You want it to go through an extra printing process so that it can put down a color that you can't get in CMYK, or put down a varnish, or do something else to it that only can be done with a specialized printing process. So in this case, say you've got, I'm going to come in here and turn this all to black. Okay, and I have the type in here. I'm going to turn that off and go to channels, and I have my spot color right here. So when I send it to the printer, this is what he's getting as far as what the cover of an annual report would be, for instance. But he's going to get a note from you saying, okay, I want just the word as a varnish. So he's going to print this out on a matte paper, a non-shiny paper, and then he's going to run it through one more printing press and put a varnish just where the word type is. So what that will mean is that this black paper will, the black cover of the annual report, for instance, I'm sure you've seen this somewhere along the line in your lives. You'll have this black sheet of paper, and popping up from just one small spot in it will be this area that's glossy and a little bit raised because it has a varnish on it. That is how you tell the printer to put in a special color, any color that's not available in CMYK, and now you know there are a lot of colors that aren't available in CMYK, like bright blues, Kelly greens, those kind of things, or where you want to varnish, for instance. Those are a couple of instances where you'll use spot colors. When you use a spot color, you've got to save the file as, and here it comes. Okay, save the file as a DCS file, DCS1 or 2, okay? And you can kind of, if you get into this, just ask the printer which he wants. That's the easiest way to do this. So I'm going to save it as a DCS. Notice now I have the option of saving spot colors right there, okay? And that's how you save your spot colors in order to send them to a 4-color printing press for special colors, special consideration. So that's what we have about channels. Let me show you one more thing here. I'm going to throw that one away right now because I want to talk about density masking as well, which is the last thing I'm going to talk about in this video. Density masking is simply, it's a big name, but it's very simple. All it is Command or Control clicking on the composite on one of the channels to load a selection of the lighter pixels. So for instance, if I click on the blue channel here, it's loading mostly the stuff inside of this flower. So when I go back to the layers, the composite, the background, and copy and paste, you can see it's just getting mostly the pink in there. Right? So if I go back and reselect that area, right there, my reselection option didn't work. I can come in, I'm going to throw that away, and I can inverse this layer, for instance, if I want to get the dark areas, inverse, and I can make all those areas a little bit darker to give me more contrast. Okay, and I'm not darkening the light areas, the lightest areas, because I've already selected and inversed the selection. I selected the lighter areas, now I'm selecting the darker areas. Okay, if I inverse the selection again, I can come in here and change the hue of those lighter areas. I'm just getting in here, and here we go. Okay, so you can see how a density mask, if you've got a bright area or dark areas that need work, can be a very, very helpful thing to know about. Funny name, kind of daunting name, but that's all it is the ability to just click, Command or Control, click on an area of an image, to select an area of an image that's brighter. And then remember that you can inverse that. So for instance, this is a really good density mask right now because we've increased that contrast. Command or Control, click on this. And now if I want to commit back into my layers, J, and you'll see I've got more stuff here than I originally had because I upped the contrast. So that's all a density mask is. Okay, that covers very quickly, very briefly, some of the high points of what I wanted to cover in chat. Remember to put your questions in the general discussion area if you have problems with this, if you have anything that needs more clarification. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.